Happy Sunday, everybody. I am so grateful that you could be here with me today. Now let's just, you see all of these goodies that I have sitting here? We're going to be using all of those. So let's just chat for a minute. So we are going to be making cowboy butter. Now I got to tell you, I'm not really clear on why it's called cowboy butter. I think it's good for anybody, anytime, anywhere. Anyway, there you go. We've got all the any's out of the way. This is absolutely delicious. And whether you're looking for something to make a dressed up form of garlic toast, or you're wanting to finish your steak with it, or remember a couple of weeks ago, the butter stuffed burgers, yep, it is good for that too. Now, I was not nearly as organized. Oh, I gotta bring this out. Forgot about that. I'll just set that right there. I wasn't quite as organized this week as I was last week, so I did not get my compound butter made until this morning, but it has had time to be sitting and all of the spices to be hanging out together and getting to know each other, and so it's going to be absolutely lovely. This is delicious. Now, this is a recipe, and I've switched it up a little bit, but this is a recipe that originally came from allrecipes.com, I think. At any rate, it's called cowboy butter, and we're going to switch it up a little bit, but not very much. So, first thing we need is to be able to see the counter. Good morning, Anne-Marie. How are you? Okay, now I just need to be able to figure out what the heck I'm doing. Okay, so we need 1 stick of butter, 4 ounces, 112 grams, however you want to say that. Now, this I maybe could have done a couple of minutes before we started hanging out, but I wanted it to be soft. So we're just going to turn that on for a few seconds. Now the butter has been sitting out, but even though it's been sitting out, we want to make sure that it's really soft, about room temperature. Oh, I'm glad to hear you're doing well. Room temperature butter, depending on how warm you keep your house, might be way soft enough, or it might not. And our house is cool, so I put this in the microwave for about 6 seconds. I know that doesn't sound like it's even enough to do anything, but trust me, it is. And it's going to soften this butter just enough. Now, the very first thing that we're going to add is 5 grams, or 1 tablespoon-ish, give or take, of fresh, and I really recommend fresh. Although, if you want to do this all with dried spices, by all means, your kitchen, your rules. But this is flat leaf parsley. Now, I am very grateful that I had, now let me see if I can show you this. Yeah, it's not going to focus. What the heck? Anyway, my husband was kind enough to dig up my herbs that I was growing outside and bring them indoors. So, hi, Del. So I have some fresh herbs to use because I know they're pricey at the store, but if you've got them, use them. If you don't have them, can't get them, then use dried if you want to. So this is 5 grams of flat leaf parsley. Now, when you are shopping for parsley at the grocery store, make sure that it's flat leaf. Curly leaf parsley is beautiful, but it has a different mouthfeel and a little bit of a different texture that doesn't work really well in our butter today. So we're just going to get all of this out of here and dump that in. And then next on our list of things to add is 5 grams of fresh chopped chives. Now this is something, you can grow this in the house, you guys. If you have a room with a window, I don't even care what direction the window is facing, you can grow this inside. That being said, I went outside in November in Canada, And I picked this from my garden, and I'm reasonably sure I'm not going to have any more growing, but these are fresh chives out of the garden, and I dug up a little piece to bring in the house, so I will have fresh chives all winter long. Now, the next thing that we're going to do, set that aside for a second, and we are going to add 1 teaspoon of grated lemon zest. Now, this is not fresh lemon zest. This is dehydrated lemon zest. Good morning, Mom. So you've seen me before if you've hung out with me for any length of time. When I can find a good deal on lemons, I freeze them, I zest them and dehydrate the zest, and that way when we're doing something like this, I have what I need. So because this is dehydrated, I only used about half a teaspoon, a little more than half a teaspoon. And this is lemon zest, but to that, I am adding 1 teaspoon of key lime juice. Now this is just going to give this a little bit of a different personality. And I'm putting the key lime juice in the lemon zest just to kind of rehydrate it, because we don't want to take a chance on this being crunchy in our butter. Okay, so now that we have that done, we're just going to set it aside for a minute. And next thing, we're going to add about 2 tablespoons of Dijon mustard. And you don't have to go to some fancy deli that has the high-end whatever. This is just French's Dijon mustard. Dijon mustard is not something that I typically use. If I am putting it on a hamburger or whatever, you can be sure that it is going to be French's yellow mustard. It's just what I grew up with. It's what I love, and it's what I use. But in this, Dijon mustard adds just another little bit of depth that is lovely. Now this is going to be, get the mustard out here. Oh my goodness, it's being stubborn. There we go. This is going to be about 2 teaspoons. Now this is a tablespoon, I know, but this is going to be about 2 teaspoons, give or take. And you can add a little more, a little less of Dijon mustard right into our bowl. Waste not, want not, right? Okay, so there is that. And now we're going to start adding some TSL spices. So if you don't have TSL spices in your cupboard, you can use other stuff. But if you need TSL spices in your cupboard, you know how to get hold of me. Okay, so actually, not quite true. One more thing to do before we get to the other spices. We are going to add 1 clove of garlic. Now, if you go and look this recipe up on the website that I found it on, you will see that they ask for not 1, not 2, but 4 medium cloves of garlic. Now, I love garlic. I absolutely love garlic, but I can assure you, I do not want to be around anybody that has eaten 4 cloves of garlic. That's too much even for me. So, garlic press if you have it. Mince it very fine or puree it with your knife and a little bit of salt on a cutting board. And this is beautiful, locally grown garlic. I still have to go out and plant my garlic. You plant it in the fall, and when you pull it out, that's all you have left. It's just the husk off it. So you're getting the beautiful garlic-y stuff, and that goes right into the compost along with the skin that was on it. Now you want to wash your garlic press as soon as you can, because if it dries in there, oh, it's not going to be good. Okay, now onwards and upwards. We have, let's go over, what do we have? We have our garlic in there. We have our chives, our parsley, our Dijon mustard. Now next, this doesn't need to rehydrate for very long. We're going to add our lemon zest. Now you can use lime zest if you want, I suppose, but our lemon zest, because it's yellow and the butter is yellow and it just looks beautiful in there. Not that we're really going to see it a lot, but we're going to add our lemon zest and our lime juice. And the lime juice is just lovely. And typically I would say use fresh, but here's the thing. I didn't have a fresh lemon. And I'm not going to use a fresh lemon this week, and I didn't want to get it and waste it. So I decided to switch it up and use lime juice with the dehydrated lemon zest that I already had, and it is lovely. Okay, now we've got all of this in here. Now we're going to start adding the TSL spices. So first is 1 teaspoon of smoked paprika. This is really important, and I think the fact that it's smoked paprika is maybe why they call it cowboy butter. I don't know. So 1 teaspoon of smoked paprika, half a teaspoon, or if you want more or less, you can do that too, of, there's a little lump of black pepper. Now this is TSL fine grind black pepper, and I like the fine grind for doing something like this because I don't want to see the ground pepper chunks. You know, you can, it looks a little bit bigger. So for something like this, I like the fine grind. Now, if you have fresh thyme, you want to use about half a teaspoon of fresh thyme. If you're using ground thyme, and I don't have any fresh, it makes me very sad. I might have to do something about that. This is just a pinch, less than 1/4 of a teaspoon. Your ratios, if you're using dry spices, is about 1/3 of what you would use with fresh spices. So that's something to keep in mind. So that's TSL thyme, ground thyme. And so I also have thyme leaves. I don't want thyme leaves in here because they're dried. I don't want that crunchy bit in here, so I use the ground. Okay, so here is 1 teaspoon of TSL Organics chili powder. And this is, well, realistically, it's all optional. Now you'll notice the one thing that I have not put in here, because I plan on experimenting with my husband when he gets home to see if he likes this in a burger. This is about 1/4 of a teaspoon of TSL chili flakes. You can put this in or not. It's going to add a little extra heat. Not much, just a wee bit. And then we need to start smashing it together. Now this actually takes the longest, is mixing everything together, and you want to make sure that everything is mixed in here evenly. It looks like a mess right now, I know. And then what are we going to use it on? Well, if you're cooking steak, if you are cooking burgers, if you are doing butter stuffed burgers, I think I already shared that with you. You can use it on eggs. You can use it on vegetables. You can use it on whatever you like. This is a way to add some really intense flavor without adding a whole bunch of carbs. And it's also adding fat, which is going to be very satiating, so you're not craving a whole bunch of carbs. Now, that being said, because we've just put fresh parsley and fresh chives and all the spices in, you're going to get out of a serving, which is, I don't know, a teaspoon-ish, about 1 gram of carbs. So there are some carbs in here, very few, but there are some. So if you're doing carnivore or keto, or just trying to eat clean and do less carbs, this is an awesome way for you to spice up whatever it is that you're eating. Now, the one thing that I will warn you, it's got an itch on my hand, do not try and cook in this. And the reason for that is if you try cooking with this, when you want to do something with meat where you need a higher heat, you want to sear that meat and get that caramelization on there, then you definitely want to use something that has a higher smoke point. All oils have their own smoke point, and the one that I prefer to use is avocado oil because the smoke point is so much higher, and it is so much better for you than canola oil or vegetable oil. It still makes me chuckle when I hear somebody talk about vegetable oil, because vegetables do not have any oil. So that is just a really gross seed oil. If you ever can see a video about how that's produced, you might want to watch that. Corn oil, vegetable oil, soybean oil, any of those, canola oil, any of those cheap oils in the store, that is definitely a get what you pay for. Now you can see when I turned this over, there's still a strip of yellow butter there, so we're not quite done mixing yet, because we definitely want all the spices to be in all the butter. And it takes a couple of minutes to do, but it is definitely worth the wait and worth the time. And when you melt this, if you take a pat of this butter after it's had time to turn into its magical self, and you melt it in the microwave or in a pot, I suppose, it turns into its own sauce. It's amazing. And it's delicious. Okay, so to recap, have you got a pen? Have you got a piece of paper? Are you typing it in a document? We have 112 grams of butter. We have 5 grams each of, you know, that other stuff that we have. Parsley and chives. You could, if you don't have chives, you could use green onion. You could use shallot. 1 tablespoon chopped fine. If you're using green onion, use the greens rather than the whites. The greens have fewer carbs in it, so you're keeping that carb count low. And then we have 2 teaspoons of Dijon mustard-ish, a teaspoon of, or about half to 3/4 of a teaspoon of dehydrated lemon zest, and a teaspoon of oh my goodness, I'm losing my words. Anybody who knows me will just be amazed by that. Nobody ever thought that could happen. A teaspoon of key lime juice. And the key lime juice really gives it that zing. But all by itself, it isn't going to help without the Dijon mustard, or it's not going to help as much. Okay, there. Now I think we have this mixed up enough, and I flipped a little piece of it out. So now a piece of parchment paper, a piece of plastic wrap. Got something in my eye. You could even put this in a sandwich bag if you wanted to. Okay, now I don't want this to roll up on me, so we're just going to put this on one end and this on the other. It doesn't take very much to hold that parchment paper out. And we're going to turn this into a log, just like we did with the other compound butter. And this compound butter, if you wanted to put rosemary in it, you absolutely can put rosemary in it. I would highly recommend either TSL Organics ground rosemary or fresh rosemary. So I remember when the kids were little and I would make spaghetti sauce or something that had rosemary or Italian seasoning in it, and they'd go, how come there's sticks in it? And they didn't like it much. So I grind rosemary so that other people with kids don't have to worry about whether or not their kids are going to like it. So it's just the flavor. And when it's ground, when it's dried and ground, the flavor is more intense. Now I'm just smoothing this out a little bit so that we don't get it all over the parchment paper and make a mess. And you want to put this in the fridge for a couple hours at least. If you can do it the night before, which I intended to do and I didn't get done. I'll get a little bit more here. If you can do it overnight, that's even better. The longer these flavors have to get to know each other, the happier they're going to be and the better they're going to get along. So it just, every little bit of time that they get to know each other changes the flavor just a wee bit. Now I'm squeezing this so that it is, well, hopefully not a lot of air bubbles in there. And I got a little bit up there that's going to be wasted, but that's okay. Just making it into a nice log so that when we take it out of the fridge or the freezer, whatever, it's going to cut into nice round pats. Not that that's going to help the flavor at all, but it looks pretty. Okay, so we have a relatively round log of beautiful compound butter, and this is ready to go in the fridge. And this is ready to be out of the fridge. Do you want to see? You want to see? Do you? I do. Okay, now this. So 2 things about this butter. First of all, I found this recipe. I found this recipe in a message. So my husband saw it online and decided that it was maybe something that we should try. So, you know, when you have, there I am knocking stuff around. When you have somebody that is doing keto with you and they want to try something, yeah, just do it. Now you can see that when I rolled this one, I didn't get this one very nice, but I got this end better. Okay, so look at that. How amazing is that? It is beautiful compound butter. Now, I love butter in my coffee. This would be an exception to that rule. Don't put this in your coffee. Oh my heavens. I tell people quite often, oftentimes when we think we're hungry, we're not hungry. Our mouth is bored and it wants flavor. Your mouth is not going to be bored if you're eating this butter. So this is going to make absolutely beautiful butter stuffed burgers. It's going to have a little bit of heat and a little bit of zing and just a little bit of all kinds of things. And it's going to be going on eggs, and it's going to be going on all kinds of stuff. Experiment with your spice cupboard. And if you're using dried spices to make compound butter, use the ground stuff or rehydrate it a little bit. It's not going to be quite the same as fresh, but you do what you can do with what you've got. You do not need to go out and buy a whole bunch of stuff. So stuff that I already had in my house was the parsley and the chives and the Dijon mustard and the key lime juice. Should you be using fresh? Absolutely you should, if you can. If you don't have any reason to have it and you don't want to freeze it, don't waste 3/4 of a lemon, although you could put a slice in your water. Use what you've got. So I hear all the time from people, I couldn't do keto because it's so expensive. It is exactly as expensive as you want it to be. If you can afford to buy Wagyu beef for supper every night and put something like this on it after you've paid your chef to cook it, knock yourself out. That's great. If you're working on a budget, instead of putting this on Wagyu steak, it's going to go into a butter stuffed burger. And the butter stuffed burger is using cheap cuts of ground beef. Or ground beef and ground pork. Watch for it to go on sale. Watch for something to be marked down a little bit and throw it in your freezer. You can do it inexpensively if you watch what you're doing. So that's important because you don't have to you don't have to mortgage your house to buy groceries every week. Well, you kind of almost do in this day and age. Groceries are so expensive, but that makes it even more important to be able to do something like this with the ingredients that you already have in your fridge. So you're using everything. And if you have something that is fresh and you know you're not going to use it, dehydrate it or portion it and throw it in your freezer so that you've got it for later. Do not throw it in this freezer. The freezer above your fridge is a frost-free freezer. And the reason that that's important is because frost-free refrigerators, frost-free freezers pull the moisture out of things. So whether it's this butter or a steak or a hamburger, if you leave it in this freezer, you don't want it to be there for more than a month or two. It's going to start pulling the moisture out of it, and that's why you see so many ice crystals on things that come out of the top of your freezer. Put it in a deep freeze, one that you have to defrost. The fact that you have to defrost it tells you that it's not pulling all of that moisture out. Your food is going to stay fresh and beautiful a lot longer. This is not going to exist long enough to need to go in any freezer because it is going to be used on all kinds of fun stuff. I am so grateful that you were here with me this morning, that you took time out of your Sunday morning to be here. Thank you very much. I hope all of you do your very best to live your best version of yourself this week and reach out to somebody that you haven't seen for a while, that you haven't talked to for a while. You never know how badly they need to hear from you, and it is going to enrich your life every bit as much as it enriches theirs. So go see them, call them, do whatever. It's going to make your Sunday brighter, and I am looking forward to reaching out to somebody when I get off of here and having this compound Cowboy-ish butter that does not have 4 cloves of garlic in it. Good grief. Okay, have an amazing Sunday. Thank you again for being here. I'm very grateful for your company. This is absolutely one of my favorite parts of the week, and I will see you again next week, and we are going to be doing some Christmas fat bombs, and we'll talk about fat bombs and whether or not we need them and whether or not we should have them. So I will see you next week. Have a wonderful week, everyone.